Okay, so we are live. We are Lex and China, along with the brilliant Maya Williams. We are the editors of Revolutionary Mothering, Love on the Front Lines, and this is the third online Revolutionary Mothering virtual kitchen table chat. I don't know about you, China. I have like some tea and oatmeal right here. So
Yeah,
I
I just drinking my cup of tea, but I have some like coconut water in the cup.
Cool. I consider myself to be having breakfast with you and everybody else who's watching now or who will be watching later. And so I just am really excited to talk with you about this project that we love, about the projects that you've been doing. And in my excitement, I wrote you a haiku poem. Would you like to hear it?
I would love to.
Okay, here it goes. It's called China.
Oh my goodness.
Future generations. Printed, stapled love remains, page by growing page. That's it.
It feels like a tree and a zine. Like your poem feels like where you can see the circles in the inside of a trunk when you're by growing page. That's what it made me feel like.
Yeah. Well, I think I love that image. I think that's a great way to start. I see that this project, Revolutionary Mothering, as related to earlier projects that you've done, to your zine, The Future Generation, that you created, to the book that you created from that zine, to the work that you've been doing with Kid City Baltimore, to the book that you created along with Vicky Law, Don't Leave Your Friends Behind, about really thinking about our movement in an inclusive way. And so I would just love to hear about that. Like what made you start this process of building layers and building archive energy and communication around the idea of mothering and revolutionary movement?
Yeah, it's definitely an evolution. And then I have to think about how to talk about that somewhat succinctly. Like as you get older and it is all these layers and you think back to things, you can't even say where it starts. I mean, one of the questions, I was on a zine panel at the Baltimore Book Fair on Sunday, and one of the questions was, what was one of your zine inspirations? And I would have to say that is my great grandmother, because she always cut and paste things out of Woman's Day into a scrapbook. She would cut out flowers and she would cut out sayings and poems. And it wasn't a recipe book, because she also had that, but it was literally just an ins book. And also she was a seamstress. And that's one thing I hung behind me, is like a small quilt from my grandmother's quilt club. It's just like a collective quilt they had done, because I just feel, for me, it's so much something that I was raised with, like my great grandmother being my first babysitter, and that kind of creativity. So I feel like sewing and cut and paste, so it's hard to say, like, but yeah, I have a strong feeling of that. And then, okay, so trying not to start at the layers, but okay, so, feeling inspired, and many people find their mothers or their grandmothers or other people that are not their mothers or their grandmothers, but have that mothering energy, or that, like their early teachers, like who are the things, that pass on a kind of legacy to you. So it's that, and then, oh geez, I'm gonna be really informal, so please forgive me, everyone.
Oh, don't worry. Yeah, that's the point. This is the kitchen table.
Yeah, because when the book comes out, I want to be like polished and be able to talk in public, about like really like give this book, like showcase it. But right now it's just like you and me. I'm sitting in my bedroom, so maybe it's a lot of show and tell. So this book, I don't know if you can see it. This came out in 2007. and it's like, that's a funny, when you open up, no. This is a poster I made. It was of my refrigerator, and it was like a magnet on it. It says, "I'm an anarchist." And the refrigerator is like pretty freaking empty. And it says, "My refrigerator is empty." And that was actually like super depressing and sad to me, but it's one of those times when you look at something and it's so horrible and you turn it into art. And so like, I always feel like, I really do feel like art is so important. Like, you know, okay, so rambling, but this was the first book that was a compilation of my zine, The Future Generation, which was started in 1990 when my daughter was 2 years old. So it was definitely motherhood that propelled me into making a zine. I had seen zines for a long time. I had considered myself a writer, but I didn't have the self-discipline, and I wasn't sure what I had to say to the world. It seemed like everybody else had everything covered better. Like, I felt like there was a lot of culture and counterculture and things happening, like coming up in kind of the Reagan era in the 80s. There was a lot of demonstrations. There was a lot of trying to make like alternatives. I don't know. I felt like there was a lot of people around me and older people that could say things better. But when I had a child, I couldn't keep up with building. I couldn't keep up with everybody in the same way. And my life was meant to be resistance. Like, I was not fitting into the status quo. I did not want to. I wanted to overthrow. Like, I felt like a super death culture. You know, like, since I was young, I was thinking of like atom bombs and apartheid, and everything, you know, just seemed like the end of days. So it's like, everything that inspired me is like, we're trying to build something better to live in. But once I had a child, I felt like I was early on in my circles of people that I knew that had a child. And so people's attitudes to me changed, and I was really, really surprised. And I really, and I needed to make a zine because I wanted to find other people to discuss this about and to learn from each other. And also, I didn't think it was a personal issue of just like, this is my child and me and my child, but I saw it as, you know, this is another issue, another community issue, another important thing that we need to talk about as a community. So that was the motivation for making my zine. Like many people talk about zines where they talk about, I didn't see what I wanted myself. It's a very common theme, you know. And also, I find zines are such a good step. Like, for me, I could grow out of that arena where I loved writing and reading, and I came from a family where it was like letter writing, but all this stuff was, it's hard for me to figure out the words. Sometimes I think it's maybe like a class consciousness I'm trying to understand too, because I felt like I wasn't an official person, or I'm not the kind of person that can speak in a larger media, or I don't. But zines gave me that place where you can, they're less intimidating. You know, I didn't care that I couldn't spell all the words. It didn't matter to me. And other people felt welcomed that they could see my roughness, and then they felt like they could write for me too. So I felt like it was a very friendly place to find. It's a very like empowering and friendly place to find yourself. And through the long journey of the layers, I found, you know, you see for yourself, like writing in your own handwriting. I don't know if you can see this. This is like some notes I kind of like remember to talk about. But you can see the difference between your own handwriting, you know, pen and ink, paper, Xerox, typed, published, blog, book, newspaper. It demystifies it. You know, like, we all have this power to do this. These words are really important to us. These words, we can write them and even show anybody, and they have power. And then when you start, like, you know, hearing words and putting it into the material world, you know, I feel pretty strong in that realm now in my life, even though I still feel I still feel very not good at a lot of things. Like, you know, I need to prepare. Like, I need to prepare more to be better spoken. But I feel strong, as in, like, my writing doesn't have to be perfect to be important, and I feel like I have confidence and love to share, that we, with others, that we can work on. We can work on our writing as a really important thing. So I feel like through my zine, like through from the practicalness of creating it, from having to know people, like you have friends at Kinko's or something that would Xerox your zine for free. So it's like all the networks of how you made it, which is still going on with us, like all the networks of how we support each other and how it comes to be, the technical, it's like the sewing, like the material, like the technical elements to the like spiritual and mental and emotional, like, okay, now I'm getting lost, but trying to get to the layers. But
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Edited a couple compilations, so then I started feeling stronger as an editor. You know, like I still don't know how to spell, but I have a sense of this bell that rings in my head of what feels good or not, and I have like love and dedication, and it's something I have time. See, I'm 49, empty nest mom, and a lot of things are pretty good in my life where I have this like time that a lot of people don't have. So with the time, I can help nurture the book project. I think I've gotten lost, Alexis.
Yeah, no, I think it's all connected, you know, and it makes me think about some of our publishing foremothers, and you know, this being a kitchen table conversation and me just being obsessed with Kitchen Table Press. I'm always thinking about Kitchen Table Press, you know, but I think what you said, you know, about the quilting, about the urgency of wanting to express yourself as, you know, a parent with different access to movement spaces than you had before. And also just this reality of like, I'm an anarchist and my refrigerator is empty, you know, that brings me back to this idea of Kitchen Table Press drawing on all of those foremothers who are creating what they're creating out of what they have access to in a very miraculous way, you know, and that being what gives them the energy to be able to say, okay, we don't have to go through all these gatekeepers. We don't have to have our work published in this particular way. And we feel the urgency to document what's going on with us right now, you know, and then I think about when we did a mobile homecoming interview with Barbara Smith, and we were asking her about the Black feminist retreats that the same group of folks who founded Kitchen Table Press used to have, and they always had this stuff on the sign-up sheets about like, do you have kids? How many kids do you have? What are your childcare needs? And I just thought that was so exciting to see, you know, in the late 70s and early 80s when they were having these retreats. And when I asked her about it, she was just like, there's no way that we could have not done that. Not just because mothering was central to the way they were thinking about their work or that people who were involved were mothers, but also just because for her at that moment, like they would have just been out of step with what it was to organize together if they hadn't included those things. You know, it never would have occurred to them to not include those things because of the culture they were creating.
Right.
So I wanted to connect that to your work. I've heard you talk really powerfully before and since and through Don't Leave Your Friends Behind about some of the experiences that you've had in terms of how childcare is, and especially is not, included in movement spaces, and then kind of holistically what it means to try to remember and also recreate a culture where there's no way that you would not include those questions, those concerns in every movement space that we convene. So can you talk a little bit about just that journey and your work with Kid City Baltimore and your work on the different convenings that I know you've been a part of, and then also how that relates to the book Don't Leave Your Friends Behind?
Yes. I think in the 80s, things dramatically changed. like a lot of stuff some of us that are younger, and I include myself as younger in the sense of I wasn't there. So like you research it and you open it up. The radical activity that was going on in the 60s and 70s, early 80s, by the mid 80s, like where I felt like the Reagan era where I was coming up, it was just so dramatically different. And so, and a lot of, I guess, feminism or white feminism, where it became very, the whole thing about being like really pro-choice, but not reproductive justice. Where it felt like there was a strong thing about just like you can have everything, just get a babysitter, or you know, like you can have everything if you're the person who has a babysitter and maids, or you have other women being oppressed to support you, and you can have it all or something.
Right.
Was so different. That's so they didn't address childcare because it was just like, you know, we don't want to be stuck with children. Like we're not, you know, it was like rejecting the whole, like instead of rejecting oppression, like just rejecting children or something, you know, rejecting like motherhood as even a, I don't know. Other people, that's a thing. But I'm just saying, like, I think that was one thing. Like the climate became really different. So in that climate of like increasingly like individualism and increasingly everything bad, it seems like, that a lot of people lost some intergenerational life skills. And I still kind of feel that, like in a way, like I feel like people are, I don't feel as much as an anti-child sentiment, but sometimes I feel like an anti-relationship sentiment going around. Like people they feel like it's too much energy to be committed to each other or something, like they don't want to be held down. But anyway, so in that kind of thing, you know, and feeling with myself, like for me, mothering was really something that I loved and I felt I really wanted. And then, okay, bring it back to childcare. I feel like there was such a huge segment of my life where I was involved in radical childcare. And I did that as an empty nest mother, okay? Because all this stuff, when I talk about time, when I was like a single mom, raising my child on welfare, you know, time was a whole different thing. And I would not expect myself in that time. I mean, I know there are mother organizers of childcare, and I don't want to disrespect that. But I just felt like for me, I needed somebody to give me a break. I didn't want to be organizing the childcare. So as an empty nest mother, I felt like I was in this position where there was a lot of like child-free young radicals around me that were interested in doing childcare, and we could work to organize, maybe just for a moment, some like autonomous, supportive, utopian, beautiful spaces, you know. And it just started at, I think the first time was at the Mid-Atlantic Radical Book Fair in Baltimore. I simply told the organizers, I was like, are you having childcare? That was my question. And more than a question, I wanted to assert with them that it was important, they should do it. And they were like, yeah, but we don't have anybody to do that. We don't know what we're doing. And somehow from that conversation of me, you know, trying to tell them they should have childcare, somehow I slipped into being the person who organized the childcare. And a lot of times that might be a bad thing, but for me, I think it was a good thing because I grew a lot in an empowering way as an organizer through learning how to do that. And I called upon a lot of people. You know, I never, ever, ever think of something that I'm going to do it by myself or something. You know, that's like the most ridiculous, like burnout. You know, I just tried to like ask everybody and talk to everybody and like talk to parents, get their input, you know. So I got the wisdom from people who don't have a lot of time, and then, you know, talk to the people who have a lot of time on their hands, because here I am, this very, like, for me, I felt so free after being like a mother for half my life and not having a dependent. I felt like I could do that. So from there, I was involved in a lot of different childcare spaces, and they were super exciting and transformatory, but it was too hard. And my dream was, I was like, oh, I would love to be in a childcare collective. You know, I would love to be like thinking about this and doing this as a group of people. I just thought that would be amazing. The same way when I was a young mom, I used to dream about like squat childcare revolution. I was just like, people should just like open up buildings and build these. I'm always thinking about like building, you know, wonderful things. So I heard about regeneration in New York, and they were so inspiring. And I'd heard about other things in the 70s too. You know, it was like Young Lords in New York had organized childcare. I heard about things in Berlin during the 70s and 80s. So when I met two people, Sina and Harriet, I think it was actually Sina who was looking for somebody to do childcare at the City from Below conference, which was the Right to City conference in Baltimore. And somehow we all met, and we were all interested in doing it. And I think Harriet decided to bottom line, because I used to be so afraid of responsibility. I was so afraid. And I think I was afraid because I feel like mentally unstable a little bit. Like I feel like I'm not sure if I can plan for the future, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to, you know, be steady. I mean, I feel like a lot stronger now. That's just like I've grown through childcare organizing. I used to be really scared to take on responsibility, and it just seemed so much. And so I was so grateful that Harriet was like, I'm bottom lining this, because then I can just like throw in all my energy, you know, like it just felt good to that somebody else they got it. But it really turned into the three of us a lot, learning and growing together to make not just childcare, but childcare programming. We wanted the kids to experience, we want the kids to be experiencing the same kind of things that the adults were experiencing. And I felt like, and I also did a workshop, and I felt like if I hadn't done a workshop, and like Vicki encouraged me too, if I didn't do a workshop, there wasn't going to be any subject about kids in the city. There was going to be this exciting conference talking about right to city, and no parents and children issues in the workshops or represent. So I had a workshop, and we also always pushed as activists. We always pushed, you know, we did get a basement room in that space. But we always pushed for space to be like included in every decision, to be, you know, like a collective. We want to work with the whole conference and everybody coming, you know, that people should volunteer. Like we want to build a more idealistic kind of childcare that's supported, where that it like increases joy and ability and experience. Rather, we don't want to recreate some kind of overburdened, oppressive childcare where we're going to say, you know, two people are in charge of this in this terrible space with nothing fun to do, you know? So it was always like, it was just this, and I think the three of us were just like big dreamers too, and always just so, we would just like, so after that conference, it felt so good. They were like, hey, let's stay together. And so Kid City was the name of the childcare we did there, but it became a collective for about 3 years. And we have a blog. And eventually, we also made a zine called the Kid City Model to share what we had learned. And we've worked nationally. It's funny I say nationally, but the group is called the Intergalactic Childcare Conspiracy. Right? Intergalactic. I don't know, but it's about galaxies. But there's a group of where different childcare collectives in different cities, we met together in Detroit. Or maybe we first met at the U.S. Social Forum, and then a lot of times, like the Allied Media Conference, we were doing childcare together. But I gotta say, the one thing it still is, like, it's so inspiring, but it can still, you have to fight so hard to be part of the larger group and not marginalized, and not, it's very easy to be overburdened as a childcare volunteer in the way that it can be, it's different, but in the way that it can be for a parent, you know, then when it's a childcare volunteer, you just need to still have like lots of support, like a network of support, everywhere. So I just want to say for a little bit, just for everybody, maybe, oops, are you there? I lost you. I don't see you, Alexis, if you can see me. I don't know if I'm on here live all by myself. That would be embarrassing. Like I'm just sitting here. Okay, okay. Yeah, maybe. Okay, great. I'll just keep talking. Okay, so for me, like my working as childcare activism, I felt like that was like a real serious activism growth with myself, and that I worked in for a long time. And one of the workshops we did, Vicky Law and I, was a workshop called, it didn't start, but it turned into being called Don't Leave Your Friends Behind. At first, we tried to have a workshop to create a support group for parents at the Anarchist Book Fair in Baltimore, but all the parents were so burnt out and they didn't have support. And so we decided that we would never do a workshop like that again, but we needed to enlist the support of the community for parents and youth. So we started to do workshops called Don't Leave Your Friends Behind. And then we made zines from them. And then eventually the zines, we did a book, kind of distilled it into a book project, asking people for more things, but using some of the stories from our zine. And so this is like Don't Leave Your Friends Behind, concrete ways to support families and social justice movements and communities. Okay, so these are two huge segments of my life, of like parenthood, and then like, you know, empty nest, childcare activism. And some of it, I gotta say, some of the childcare activism was kind of addressing my own pain, of times that I had felt not supported, of problems, of guilt with what, feeling I haven't done enough for my daughter. You know, there's hard times, there's really hard times in being a radical parent. So I was also trying to give to that. And I think why I pulled out of it, because I definitely feel like I've all these things, they're still part of you. They're part of you. Your childhood's part of you, your parenthood's part of you. You go through things, but I've pulled back because I feel like I really, in the stage of life that I am right now, in like almost turning 50, I feel like it's time, I feel like it's this really, really wonderful time in my life where I have to work on some things for myself and explore some things for myself that are non-parenting related. And, you know, like, I love my daughter, so love her. She's in the next neighborhood over to me. I see her. I have friends with children. I have all this in my life and I care about all this, but it's like it's just time for me. Like last year I went into like therapy for the first time, or like trying different things. I'm trying to finish writing a novel, just like exploring those things, working on myself. So I'm going through a different stage. So I kind of consciously, like, I felt like I gave stuff to Radical Childcare and I would like to volunteer a shift or something, but I want to step back as an organizer. So that part moves on, right? So I don't think I would have really participated in any more parenting, community care, huge projects if it wasn't for Maya and Alexis, who are incredibly beautiful visionaries, and the vision of revolutionary mothering, and how necessary, how needed it is. Because what I would say my journey is that for a long time now, I've been really obsessed with race and class, like analyze, figuring it out more. Because if you don't name things, it's not going to happen. Like let's see. Whoops, there she is. I think Alexis is joining us. Eek. What? Oh no. I was almost there, and I think I pushed something wrong. I pushed something wrong. Wait a minute, hang on. I'm going to tell her that. I was almost there, and I pushed the wrong button. Yeah, I want to be really specific, as well as I understand that I'm not the best spoken person, but I also, it's also really important to be really specific. Like, we're always trying to work on our language, and language is a living thing, and it's also more than just the words. It's, you know, words can be used to bamboozle too. So just having a good vocabulary doesn't mean everything. Okay, here we go. Why is this not letting me see this button? You're already in a video call.